So in continuing with our InterFX live conversations, we're here with Russ Somma. Russ is the president of SommaTech, an affiliated consulting company of IPS. Russ, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you for having us, Jeff. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Russ, you're considered somewhat of an expert in looking at the FDA's FastTrack Approval process and some of the synergies that it shares with the quality by design movement that's so popular in the pharmaceutical marketplace right now. Maybe you can offer some thoughts on those two topics and how they kind of intertwine.
Well, FastTrack's been around for us quite a bit. Quality by design is a relatively new boy on the block. I think pretty much what we've been doing over the years that we've been looking at this is trying to draw a simile. Some of our clients understand FastTrack approval, rolling approvals, things like this. And they look at quality by design as yet another hurdle to get over. And what we've been showing them is that it's a business practice, and that business practice can be adopted. Pretty much if you've been through a FastTrack approval process and have the scars of having your development time cut in half, the aspects of quality by design become pretty much apparent to most of these people. Meaning, of course, you got to do some of the work up front. Pretty much what that's quality by design, but it also gets you ready for FastTrack. Especially in today's day and age where we've seen a lot of people, a lot of activity in the oncology business, where development of medically significant compounds have development times cut in half as far as development of the pharmaceutical product as opposed to the clinical. What that does, quite honestly, Jeff, is that does wonders for the patient. It puts a life-saving drug out there, gets people happy and excited on the clinical side. But on the CMC side, the guys who have to make it and the guys who have to develop it, our timelines don't get cut in half. So we're kind of racing to get it done. So the answer really is you have to go into this thing as if it was FastTrack, as if you wanted to take it and say, tomorrow I'm going to get an unmet medical need requirement, and it's going to be a real good drug. And you have to start building this for success real early on. And I think people, when they seen that in FastTrack, they thought that was isolated incidents. And really, it turns out that the business practices you use to bring that sort of stuff to commercial success is pretty much the same stuff you want to do with quality by design. And that's really what we've been preaching about and talking to people. And it's not all that spectacular. It's all about knowledge and how you manage it and how you put it together and how do you recover it and how do you defend it and what kind of things you want to build into your CMC so you can get changes after approval. In other words, if you want to launch an early clinical form and move this into something which is more economical to make for the patients as well as being more acceptable, that's a good way to do it. What you want to do is have this negotiation pretty much up front, which is QbD does this. This is part of what happens. And as a byproduct of that, in the FastTrack situation, the CMC part, you want to make sure that you have some sort of a buy-in so you don't change the review clock. So what am I trying to say? If you use the precepts of quality by design and you use this in FastTrack, the answer really comes back to is, hey, if sometime before final approval I get to the point where I got a better design, a better dosage form, I could submit this stuff without resetting the review clock, which is a real problem. Resetting the review clock, Jeff, simply means that there's a certain point where FDA says, well, if you change anything, we're going to have to start again. What that does is it delay approval, and significantly it changes that product ain't going to be out there for the clinic. I think that's pretty much, that's kind of the way we've been doing this. It's a pretty pragmatic approach. Take a look at the way you do your business practices.
Well, I think pragmatic can be very positive in a marketplace where delays are so costly. So that makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things that we hear about with pharmaceutical processing and talking to our readers, especially when they look at quality by design and implementing those types of approaches, that initial cost can be scary, not just in terms of dollars, but also in time and resources. What would be your thoughts in sort of talking to people about some of getting past some of those initial obstacles to realize some of the long-term benefits that you talked about, like cutting development time?
I think this is a common complaint. We hear it as well. What it really comes back to is rethinking how your business practices work. What does that mean? There are some firms, by the time they get to phase 3, they're in a launch mode. That means before they do all their scale-ups and validation, the compound and the dosage form that it sits in is pretty much commercial ready. What that says is you got to look at this rather than slapping stuff together into the clinical program. Take a hard look at what you've done. Make sure that the NCE is very well characterized, have a good handle on the physical chemistry, do not take the fast route to get to a clinical form. A lot of people, the answer in most cases is, well, I'm going to make a hard gelatin capsule. Well, sometimes some thought has to be put into, well, how much more time are you going to spend to make it a tablet, and is that possible? Assuming, of course, it's an oral. It's money well spent. I mean, this is the same sort of a thing we hear from people, and it depends on how fast do you want to enter the market. Remember, it's not just approval, it's market entry and commercialization. So what I'm saying is the more work you get done up front, and take a look at what work you've done up front. A lot of times this stuff has already been done. The things that have to be added in usually don't require that much on a quality by design. I mean, design space is just a knowledge inventory. Look around, see what you got, piece it together, rearrange the way it's put together. Like I say to people, think of it as a series of 3-ring binders. Put it all in one place, avoid the fishing expedition. I think people are a lot more ready than they think.
Excellent. You've got a rich experience in the pharmaceutical market, Russ, with SommaTech and some of the other things that you've done. What are some best practices you've seen for people who have been able to implement these approaches more quickly and more efficiently, whether maybe it was some internal process that they developed or enhanced? Is there anything that you've seen that you could pass along in terms of best practices?
I think best practices get a real good understanding of what that early development looks like. I think one of the best ways we've seen, and this has been picked up by some of these NCE development companies, where their job is simply to grind out new compounds. And really getting a compound ready for a company to flip to another company, or getting a compound ready where it looks desirable to another firm to fully develop. These are the sorts of curb ready or a curb appeal you want to build into a product. My recommendation is that, you do a full workup on the compound, you do the solubility, you do all the thermal analysis, you do all the work, you do the pre-formulation. You're going to have to do that one way or the other. And in a lot of companies, sometimes they wait till the end, figuring, well, if it crashes and burns, fine. My point is that, all right, but let's assume it's going to be a successful compound. If you want to do it later, that's how many months times full sales are you going to lose? But Jeff, to be honest, these are the same. That's the logic with a lot of people. They make a submission and then they validate the product. Well, if your objective is to reach commercial success rapidly, why wouldn't you validate it before you submit it? So when you get the green light from the regulatory authorities, it's not, gee whiz, I got to validate it. It's, gee whiz, how fast can I get it into the truck and into the distribution channel? So that's market penetration quick. It really comes down to resetting the mind. It's not so much on the technical side. We're going to do the work anyway. It's just, when do you want to do it? Pay us now or pay us later. I mean, I understand that, but there is a risk-benefit ratio here.
Absolutely. As we gear up for Interfex, I think a lot of people are excited to see always the new technologies, the new products that are going to be displayed at the show. As it relates to the things that we were just talking about here with FastTrack and QbD, are there certain technologies that you're looking forward to seeing that could have an impact in helping companies adjust and implement these things more quickly?
Absolutely, Jeff. Sorry to step on you. Yeah, absolutely. My point, I think what I'm going to be looking for is the stuff that we can scale out rather than scale up. What this is essentially a hybrid approach to making the product useful and not useful, making the product adequate in quantities that you can make commercial distribution. What does that mean? I'm going to be looking at the processes that I can just tune them up. In other words, if I run them a little longer or a little shorter, I get more product and I can adjust to market demand. What that means is that I don't have to go through the scale-up exercise. So pretty much I'm looking at modularity. If I can make 100,000 or 200,000 in one module, if scale-up just means I add another module or I run the module longer. It's a hybrid. It's not truly continuous process, Jeff. It's a hybrid approach. And it takes a lot of thought ahead of time and some testing strategies. But a lot of people are using it. So we see people picking and choosing, kind of cherry picking the QbD idea for their own commercial success in a lot of cases. But what I'm looking at is small, high efficiency in the process area, not necessarily committed to a particular product. I'm looking for modular, I'm looking for that, I'm looking for semi-continuous, I'm looking for hybrid process, something that lends itself. And I think we've come a long way on that in the industry as a whole with that.
Excellent. Last question, Russ. What are some of the biggest takeaways you usually get from attending Interfex?
Bottom line, I come to see what's new and shiny and what I can take back to my clients and point them in the right direction. I'm looking for service. I'm looking for service providers capable of of providing a platform. I'm looking at newer technology that I can use as a go-to source. I'm looking for reliability. And more importantly, I'm looking for people who have the depth of knowledge and the regulatory experience to provide that. Not every company can have a fully integrated engineering system. So what I'm looking at is, equipment and process and service providers that can add that. Sort of like, a team that you can use for a while, and then, once you get up and running, you can cut back. So I'm looking at full integration of processes, full integration of service and knowledge. There's a couple of folks here that I'm going to make a point of talking to, and let me say this. If we talk to a lot of our equipment and service providers early on here, we're not going to have the oops at the end of the process. They can give you some insight because they've been down the pipe. And that means that early on they can say, well, if you're going to go in that direction, you want to think about this. And the only way you can do that is talk to the guys providing the equipment, talk to the guys providing the service, and they're going to give you a little bit of enlightenment. So that's what I'm looking for. And that always happens in Interflex. And let me tell you, a lot of that happens right on the floor.
Excellent. Yeah, we definitely want to avoid those oops moments. That's excellent advice for attending the show and through all what we do. Russ, thanks so much for your time today. Look forward to talking to you more at the show. Russ Somma, President of SommaTech.
Thanks, Jeff. Right.